For years, my grandson was hidden less than 4 feet away from me, and I didn't even know he was mine. Then the woman who raised him died in a crash that wasn't really an accident, and a stranger lawyer pressed an envelope into my hand at her burial. I read it alone in my kitchen that night. By the final page, I hated the son I had spent 68 years trusting with my whole heart. If you're still here, drop a word in the comments telling me where you are watching from. Stories like this stick with us because somewhere in them is a piece of our own neighborhood, our own silence, our own door we chose not to knock on. Stay with me. I stood alone by the open plot, my coat soaked through, watching two men in slickers lower a plain wooden casket into the ground. No flowers, no service, just me, the rain, and a sky the color of tin. I hadn't known Alina Marsh well. 8 years she'd lived next to my son's place, and over that whole stretch we had not exchanged more than 24 sentences. I'd see her now and then hanging sheets on the line, or sitting outside with a paperback in her lap, a quiet woman always working, a small boy darting in and out of the doorway on errands. 2 weeks earlier, my son, Calvin, had pulled me aside after Sunday lunch. "Stay away from the woman on the other side of us," he had said. "She is dangerous. She has been spreading poison about Rachel and me for months." I had nodded. He was my son. I trusted him. 3 days before the burial, I had seen her obituary in the local paper. Alina Marsh, age 37, gone unexpectedly in a single-car crash. She was survived by her son Eli, age 8. The word unexpectedly sat wrong in my chest. So I drove out to the cemetery to pay my respects. When I turned to leave, I nearly walked into a woman I had never met. Mid-40s, charcoal wool coat, sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She said my name like she had been waiting. "Mr. Penn, I am Diane Lawrence, an attorney in Salem. Mrs. Marsh retained my firm before she died. She asked that this be delivered to you personally after the service." She held out a large manila envelope, slightly damp at the edges. My name was written across the front, Arthur Penn. "Why me?" I asked. She looked at me for a long beat. She said you would understand once you read it. Before I could press another question, she turned and walked away between the rows of headstones, heels clicking on the wet grass. I didn't open it in the car. I didn't open it on the drive home. I waited until I had locked the front door and turned off every light in the house. I sat at the kitchen table and tried to slow my breathing. Then I tore it open. Inside were 3 things: a 6-page handwritten letter, a stack of documents held with a binder clip, and a sealed envelope stamped with the name of a clinical lab. I unfolded the letter first. "Dear Arthur, if you are reading this, I am gone. There is no one else I can trust with the truth. 10 years ago, I worked for a small marketing firm in Boulder. Your son Calvin was a client of mine. He was charming and kind when he wanted to be. We fell into each other. When I told him I was expecting, everything changed. He stopped returning my calls. 6 weeks later, I watched him at a restaurant with another woman, Rachel. By the spring they were engaged. I was 9 months pregnant and alone. Then one night, on the eve of my last ultrasound, Calvin came to my apartment in town. He had been drinking. He looked hollow, and he confessed something I have carried with me ever since. He said, "Arthur, I cannot be a father, not after what I did on that road." He told me that a few weeks before he had learned I was pregnant, he had been drinking at a bar on the east side. He had driven home on the Canyon Road. He had hit someone, a man walking home from a late shift. Calvin said the man tumbled over the hood, hit the pavement, and didn't move. And Calvin kept driving. He pulled into a detached garage 2 days later, paid cash to have the front fender pulled and the headlight replaced, and went home to his new bride. "Arthur, your son took a man's life. He never called for help. He never said a word to the dead man's family. I forced myself to keep going. I was 26, alone, about to give birth. For 7 years, I tried to forget the man in the canyon. I couldn't. So 2 years ago, I bought the small house next to Calvin's. I told myself Eli needed to know where he came from, even if his father never said his name out loud." Calvin and Rachel panicked. Within a month, they had framed their property with a solid cedar barrier, 11 feet of plank locked at the gates. They filed for harassment orders. They sent lawyers after me for noise, for property lines, for nothing at all. Rachel threatened me twice in the driveway. I have spent more than $7,000 keeping my doors open, and Rachel is not pregnant, Arthur. There is no baby coming. It is a costume she wears for the neighbors, for the in-laws, for the court. I am afraid they will come for me. So please protect my son. His name is Eli. He is 8 years old. He is your grandson. There is a DNA test sealed in the envelope. The probability of relation is written on the front. Please do not let them get away with what they have done. I set the pages down. I reached for the sealed envelope and ripped it open with my thumb. Paternal grandfather, Arthur Penn. Child, Eli Joseph Marsh. Probability of relation, 98%. I stared at the number until it blurred. Eli had been living 4 feet from my back door for almost a decade, and I had never once suspected he was my own blood. I lifted the binder-clipped stack and flipped through pages. Photographs of a street at night, a police cordon, a sheet over a body. The Boulder Bulletin, dated August 12, 2014. Local engineer killed in hit-and-run on Old Mill Road. A handwritten receipt from a body shop dated the next afternoon. $300, cash, no name, legal filings, threatening text messages, and at the very bottom, a slim marbled notebook, pages of small, careful handwriting. March 2nd, Rachel screamed at me through my screen door this morning. She said, "Leave or you'll be sorry." I just closed the lock and went to boil the kettle. I sat in that dark kitchen for a long time. I thought about my son. Calvin had been a bright boy, a quiet kid, the kind of teenager who helped his mother rake the yard without being asked. I had sent him to college. I had walked him down an aisle. I had held his first child, the daughter who had arrived 2 years after he married Rachel. I had been so proud of him. But sitting there with the letter in my lap, I realized with a cold certainty that I had never met the man Calvin had become. I stood and walked to the window. The neighbor's house was dark. It had not always been that way. 8 years ago, I had been in this same chair when a small moving truck pulled up next door. A young woman stepped out, dark hair pulled back. Behind her, a toddler with brown curls wobbled on uncertain legs. By the next morning, I was awakened by hammering. Calvin and Rachel were building a fence, not a picket, but a wall of raw cedar 11 feet high running the entire length of the property line. By the end of the day, Eleanor's house had vanished behind it. "What's all this for?" I had asked Calvin. "Privacy," he had said without looking at me. "Just stay on our side of the line. He's my son." I trusted him. A few months later, I noticed a gap at the bottom of the fence where 2 of the boards had warped. Maybe 3 inches wide. I knelt down, peered through. A small boy sat alone on the other side, dragging a stick through the dirt. He saw me and burst into tears. I reached through the slat and waggled my fingers. "Hey, hey, it's okay, little man." He stopped crying. I dug into my pocket and pulled out a wooden bird I had been carving that morning, painted blue, polished smooth. I held it out through the gap. The boy crawled closer. He took the bird in both hands, and he smiled. "Eli," a woman's voice, urgent. Eleanor appeared at the side of the house. She scooped the boy up, eyes darting past the gap toward my yard. "I'm sorry," I said. He was upset. She studied me, then the bird, then the boy. "You carved it?" "Yes." She hesitated, then sat down in the grass beside the gap. "I am Eleanor," she said quietly, "and this is Eli." "Hello, Eli," I said. After that day I came back, 2 or 3 times a week. I would kneel by the gap, and Eli would already be waiting, knees in the dirt, hands out. I brought him small things, a wooden rabbit, a horse with a long painted mane, a turtle with a clever hinged shell. As the months rolled into years, I started reading to him through the slat. Children's picture books I had kept from when Calvin was small. When he turned 5, I gave him my smallest chisel. By the end of that summer, he had carved a clumsy, lopsided duck. He was so proud he wouldn't put it down for a week. Eleanor started bringing me coffee in a clay mug. She would sit on her side of the fence. I would sit on mine. She told me about her 2 jobs, waitressing in the morning and cleaning offices in the evening. "He is not in the picture," she said once. I did not press. I noticed. The lawyer's letters piling up on her porch. The harassment orders that always seemed to land back-stamped, denied. $7,000 spent over 7 years just trying to hold onto her house. 6 months before Eleanor died, I was sitting by the gap one afternoon, Eli inside taking a nap. "Arthur," she said quietly, If something happens to me, can you look after Eli? I frowned. What do you mean? Your son and his wife are hiding something terrible. I can feel it closing in. Forget I said anything. But I did not forget. I should have asked what she meant. I did not. 2 weeks ago I saw her death in the paper. Elena Marsh, age 37, gone in a crash on Loop Road when her brakes failed. Survived by her son Eli, age 8. So now I was sitting in my kitchen, looking at the 19 small wooden figures lined up on the table. Elena had saved every single one. I picked up the blue bird, worn smooth from small hands. I thought about the 8 years I had spent kneeling at that gap. Henry was gone. Eli was alone in a foster room somewhere, and I had a grandson, and my own child had spent a decade trying to erase him. I sat at the table until first light. My tea had gone cold an hour ago, but I barely noticed. I kept looking at the small pile of carved animals on the table, and I kept thinking about the morning Elena had warned me they were hiding something terrible. I should have pressed her that afternoon. I should have walked straight to Calvin and asked him what they were doing. I didn't. Now I'm living with that choice. I picked up the phone and dialed the County Child Services line. A woman named Carla Mendez answered. I told her who I was. I told her I believed Eli was my grandson and that his mother had just died in a crash that didn't look right. We agreed on a supervised visit for 9 o'clock Friday morning. Then I called Calvin. 20 minutes later, he was on my porch. What is this about? I went to a funeral yesterday, I said. Elena Marsh. His face went very still. Dad, I told you to stay away from that woman. She is gone now, Cal. She cannot hurt anyone. Good, he said. She was a danger to us. She moved in next door on purpose. She stalked Rachel. We were protecting the family. I took a step toward him. What about Eli? His face changed for half a second. Who? Her son. He is 8. I have never had anything to do with her boy. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the folded DNA page. This was in the legal envelope, I said. He snatched it from my hand. I watched his face drain of color as he scanned the page. From Elena's lawyer, I said. She said you are Eli's father. She said you abandoned her 10 years ago when she told you she was pregnant. She said you killed a man on Old Mill Road in 2014. Calvin's hands closed around the paper, crumpling it. She is a liar. This is a clinical report. Court admissible. He threw the page on the floor. She tried to destroy our marriage for years. Now she is trying to ruin me from the grave. I bent down and picked up the page. What happened on Old Mill Road, Calvin? He went very quiet. She made all of that up. Did you? His expression twisted. You are really going to believe that woman over your own son? I am asking you to tell me the truth, Cal. I am telling you the truth. If you believe her, you are no father of mine. I looked at him, at this man I had raised. Get out of my house, I said. He turned and pulled the door shut behind him so hard the hallway light swung. That night I barely slept. I lay in the dark, listening to the house settle around me, and thought about every choice I had made since the day Elena moved in next door. Around 1 in the morning, I padded to the bathroom and opened the medicine cabinet. My heart pills, the orange bottle I had been filling for 6 years. I shook one into my palm, swallowed it with tap water, and tried to pretend my hands weren't shaking. I went back to bed. I woke before dawn. I showered. I made coffee. I got in the car. I was on the highway, halfway to the Child Services office when the tightness hit. A weight in the center of my chest, a buzzing in my fingers. The road ahead began to swim. I wrenched the wheel to the right and rolled to a stop. Everything went gray. When I came back, I was on a gurney in a bright hallway. You collapsed, a woman said. You are at Mercy Hospital in Portland. Your cardiac medication was at 4 times the correct dosage in your blood. Tampered. If you had taken another dose, you would have had a stroke. I thought about who had been in this house. Calvin had come by last Monday evening to borrow a drill. He had been in the hallway alone for 6 minutes. I had raised that boy. I had loved him more than my own breathing. And now the pills in that bottle had nearly killed me. A knock at the door pulled me back. A man stepped in, badge clipped to his belt, tired eyes that had seen their share of long nights. Mr. Penn, I am Detective Sam Webster, Major Crimes. Let us start from the beginning. So I did. I told him about the letter, the dead man on Old Mill Road, the crash on Loop Road, the DNA test, the 8 years I had spent at a gap in the fence. Webster wrote everything down without interrupting. And she warned me, I said, 6 months before she died. Webster leaned forward. Do you have proof? I nodded toward the envelope, the letter, the diary, the body shop receipt, the brake line forensic report. A mechanic found the cut in Alina's brake line before the insurance company declared her accident inevitable. Webster opened the envelope and read one page, then another, his jaw tightening. Mr. Penn, he said, if this holds up, we are looking at vehicular manslaughter going back to 2014, at a possible homicide in 2025, and at attempted murder against you. I will start pulling warrants today. You will need to stay somewhere safe for a while. We will keep your location out of the file. Before he reached the door, he turned back. Child Services have scheduled your visit for tomorrow at 9. You are going to meet your grandson. That evening my phone rang. Dad, it was Rachel. Her voice was calm, too calm. I heard you are in the hospital. Calvin is very upset. He thinks you have been talking to the police. We are your family, she said. Not some woman who tried to hurt us for years. Not some boy who is not even part of this family. He is part of this family, I said. His name is Eli, and he is my grandson. There was a long silence. You do not know what you are doing, she said quietly, and she hung up. 3 days later, Dr. Reyes cleared me to leave. Webster drove me to a small motor inn on the east edge of town and handed me a key card. Stay here, he said. Don't go back to your house until I call you. Carla has arranged a longer visit with Eli tomorrow, with her psychologist sitting in. My throat closed. That evening I walked to a small pharmacy 2 blocks from the inn. I bought a thick sketch pad and a tin of good colored pencils. Back in the room I carved a robin, slow and careful. When I was done, I scratched 5 words into the base. For my grandson with love. I set the bird on the nightstand and lay down. The Child Services office was a quiet building with yellow walls and a plastic bin of toys in the corner. Carla opened the inner door. A small boy stepped in behind her. Dark curls, big brown eyes, a worn stuffed rabbit hanging from one hand. He looked like Alina. He looked like me. Carla knelt beside him and whispered something. He nodded and took 1 step toward me, then another. I knelt down so we were eye to eye. Hi, Eli, I said. My voice broke on the second syllable. I am your grandpa. The boy studied my face. Then he asked very quietly, are you the man through the fence? I nodded. His eyes widened a fraction. I reached into my jacket and unwrapped the robin. I made this one for you, too, last night. He stepped closer. He took the bird with both hands, and then, without a word, he began to cry. Not loud. Mama said you were the only one who really cared, he whispered. I pulled him into my arms, and he buried his face against my shoulder. I am here now, I said. I am not going anywhere. The psychologist, Dr. Bennett, watched us quietly from her chair. Eli did not let go of the bird. Buddy, I said softly, did your mama ever talk to you about the people next door? His face darkened, the bad man and the angry lady. She said the bad man used to be nice, but then he changed. And the angry lady, she yelled a lot. Mama was scared of her. Did you ever see them? He nodded. The angry lady had yellow hair. I hid in my room. Eli, I said carefully. Do you remember the night before your mama's accident? He was quiet for a long moment. I saw her, he whispered. The angry lady, she was by Mama's car. She was bent down by the front wheel, holding something in her hand. My heart stopped. Dr. Bennett brought over a low table and a box of fat crayons. Eli sat cross-legged on the floor and started drawing. Slowly, carefully, a house, a car. In one corner, a woman with long yellow hair kneeling by the front wheel. When he finished, he looked up at me. Is this okay? I swallowed hard. It is perfect, son. Detective Webster had been waiting in the hallway. He knelt beside Eli's picture, studying it. We are going to use this. Before we left, Eli ran back to his foster room and came out with a small, soft bag. He unzipped it and pulled out 19 wooden animals, every single one I had ever given him through the gap. Mama kept them safe, he said. She said you would protect me. I knelt down. I will, Eli, I promise. As we walked out of the building, Webster pulled me to one side. We pulled the security footage from your street. Calvin's car was parked in front of Alina's house the night before the crash. He was there for 23 minutes. I felt the ground slope under my feet. Webster paused. Your attorney's filing for emergency custody this afternoon. We are moving fast. He glanced at his screen. The number for Vera Monroe, the wife of the man who died on Old Mill Road, he said. She has been waiting 9 years. The coffee shop was quiet that afternoon. When Vera Monroe walked in, I recognized her at once. A woman in her early 50s, dark hair threaded with gray, dark eyes that had been through more than any one person should have to carry. She sat down across from me and looked me straight in the eye. "Detective Webster said you have information," she said, "about who hit my husband." I told her everything: the letter, the confession my son had made 10 years ago, the body shop receipt, the brake line forensic report. Her hands tightened around the edge of the table as I spoke. "My husband," she said quietly, "was Thomas Monroe. He was 43, a high-voltage lineman. Christian, our son, was 19. He dropped out of architecture school to keep our house from being foreclosed. Lucia tried twice to end her own life. She is 22 now and finally sleeping through the night. Mateo is 17. He does not remember his father." He told her, she whispered. "My husband was dead on the road, and that boy went home and told his mistress about it. He said it, and she kept it for 9 years. I slid the photocopy of Alina's letter across the table. Vera read it slowly. Her hands began to tremble. He paid cash to fix his car. He went home and let that woman raise his son in poverty while he pretended he was a decent man. All 3 of my children want to testify," she said. Webster texted me 4 minutes later. "Search warrant approved. Execution dawn tomorrow. Stay in the hotel. They are going to arrest him. If you are still with me, drop the word justice in the comments so I know you have not clicked away. Because what happened next was not just shocking. It changed everything." Quick note, the next part includes some dramatized moments for storytelling purposes. If that is not what you came for, this is a fine place to stop. I woke to the sound of machines beeping. "Mr. Penn, can you hear me? You are at Riverbend General. You were in a car accident this morning. Your brakes failed. I had been unconscious for 9 hours. I called Detective Webster. He answered on the first ring. Mr. Penn, thank God, right now I need you to see something." A moment later, my phone buzzed. The screen filled with bodycam footage. A residential street before sunrise. Tactical officers storming a house. The door splintered. Officers flooded inside. And there, in his pajamas, was my son. Calvin stood in the center of the living room, hands half raised, his face chalk-white. Rachel stumbled out of the bedroom, mouth open in a scream I could not hear through the footage. Within seconds, both of them were on the floor, hands cuffed behind their backs. 2 hours later, Webster arrived and laid a thick evidence bag on the table. We reviewed Rachel's search history. He said, "How to cut brake lines without tools, undetectable substances for elderly patients, life insurance payout after accidental death, countries without extradition treaties." Every search was made in the 2 weeks before Alina died. He pulled out a bank receipt. 2 days after the funeral, Rachel withdrew $12,000 in cash. He pulled out 2 passports and a printed flight itinerary, tickets to Panama City, departure date in 4 days, and 6 soft fabric shapes, pregnancy belly inserts in 3 increasing sizes. Her medical records show a termination procedure 2 years ago. No prenatal visits, no OB appointments. None of it was real. He reached into the bag a final time and pulled out a small black phone, a burner. He scrolled to one entry dated March 6, 11:47 p.m. "Cut the brake lines tonight. Make it look like an accident. $5,000 paid in cash when it is done." He scrolled again. March 20th, 10:32 p.m. "New target, the old man. Same method. Another $5,000. We traced the number to a woman named Jess Carter, mechanic, prior record for fraud. She confirmed she had cut my brake lines the night of March 22nd, 12 minutes under the car. We also pulled the life insurance policy on Calvin's life. You are the beneficiary, $800,000. If you had died, Calvin inherits everything and Rachel walks away a rich widow. She was going to kill me, just like Alina." Webster nodded. "She almost succeeded. 3 days later, Miss Mendez brought Eli to the hospital. When he saw my bandages, his face crumpled. 'Come here, buddy.' He ran to me. 'Are the bad people gone?' he asked. 'Almost,' I said. 'I promise you they will never come near you again.' That evening, a woman I did not know walked into my hospital room. Mid-40s, dark hair, sharp cheekbones. She looked so much like Alina it made my chest ache. "Mr. Penn," she said, "I am Diane Marsh. I am Alina's older sister." She sat, and we sat in silence for a long moment. "I have spent 10 years being furious at my little sister," she said, "and now she is gone and I cannot say I am sorry. But I can do something for her son. I have a home, a husband, room for one more. I would like to petition the court for guardianship." There it was, hanging in the air between us. "Alina named me in her will," I said. "She wanted me." Diane's jaw tightened. "I have resources. I have a 4-bedroom house in Beaverton. Caleb would have stability, private tutors, a college fund. He needs more than a 70-year-old man with a bad heart. He needs to feel safe," I said quietly. "He needs to feel loved." Alina did not want him raised in a glass house with private lessons. She wanted him looked after by someone who knew him, someone who had shown up for him when no one else did. Diane stared at me for a long moment. Then she stood. "I have retained an attorney," she said. "Family court hearing 5 days from now." I called my attorney the moment she left. The bail hearing was held the next afternoon in a packed courtroom. Calvin and Rachel were brought in separately, both in orange jumpsuits, both cuffed. Calvin looked broken. Rachel looked like stone. The judge reviewed the charges. "The state has requested that both be held without bail due to flight risk." Defense counsel stood. "My client has deep community ties. Your client had 2 passports in a suitcase dated to depart in 3 days, $12,000 in undeclared cash, a burner phone with explicit instructions to disable a vehicle's brake lines. Flight risk is the polite word for it. Bail denied. Trial set 60 days out. Outside the courthouse, the cameras found me. My son is responsible for terrible things," I said, "and I will not defend him. Justice is more important than blood." I walked away. A few days later, I was back in court for the family hearing. Diane sat across the aisle with her attorney. The judge leaned forward. "I would like to speak with the child directly." Miss Mendez brought Eli forward. He sat in the witness chair with the stuffed rabbit pressed against his chest. "Hi, Eli," the judge said warmly. "Who do you want to live with?" Eli looked at me. He looked at Diane. He looked back at the judge. "Grandpa," he said quietly, "he's my family." Diane's face crumpled. Judge Whitfield nodded. "Thank you, Eli." Diane stood suddenly. "Your Honor, I would like to withdraw my petition." "Alina chose him for a reason. I see that now. I am sorry I was not there for your mama. I am here now, though, not to take you, just to be your aunt if you will let me." Eli looked at me. I nodded. He looked back at Diane. "Okay." The judge took a breath. "Very well. I grant full custody of Eli Joseph Marsh to Arthur Penn. This hearing is adjourned." Eli ran to me. I held him with my good arm, my face wet, my heart finally at rest. The trial began 4 weeks later. The courtroom was packed. I sat with my attorney. Calvin had lost weight. Rachel looked carved from marble. The prosecutor stood. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is a case about 2 people who believed they were above the law." In 2014, Calvin Penn took the life of Thomas Monroe walking home from a double shift. He was drunk. He hit a man. He drove away. He paid cash to fix his car, and for 9 years he let Thomas's family grieve without an answer. When Alina Marsh moved in next door and threatened to tell the truth, Calvin did not confess. He built a fence. He filed lawsuits. And when that did not work, he and his wife decided to make her disappear. Rachel Penn hired a mechanic to cut Alina's brake lines. She bought fake pregnancy bellies. She packed 2 passports and booked a flight to Panama. And when Arthur Penn discovered the truth, she tried to silence him too. 3 times. By the end of this trial, you will hold them accountable. The defense attorney stood. "My client is guilty of the 2014 incident. He admits it. But there is no direct evidence he touched Alina's brakes. No witness, no fingerprint. My client was blind to it because he did not want to see it." The prosecutor called Jess Carter first. Jess took the stand looking small. She told the jury she had cut Alina's brake lines on the night of March 4th for $2,500. She told them Rachel had contacted her to do the same to my car 3 weeks later. The forensic expert walked the jury through the cuts in both sets of brake lines, identical signatures, identical tools. Then the prosecutor called me. "Mr. Penn, tell the jury about Eli." So I did, about the gap in the fence, about the 8 years of reading storybooks through a slat, About the morning, Alina had warned me they were hiding something terrible. Then came Vera. She wore a black dress. A small photo of Thomas was pinned to her jacket. "You had 9 years to turn yourself in," she said, looking at Calvin. "9 years to give my family closure. Instead, you hid. You built a fence. You terrorized a single mother. You took my husband, and you never once said you were sorry." The prosecutor called her 3 children. Christian, 28 now, Lucia, 22, Mateo, 17. Each took the stand and told the jury in their own voice what it had felt like to grow up without their father. Then came Eli. He testified from a small separate room via video, just as Dr. Bennett had prepared him. He pointed to a photograph on the screen and said, "That is her, the angry lady. She was by Mama's car the night before. I know because Mama told me to remember her, and I did." Closing arguments came the next morning. The prosecutor stood. "By the end of this trial, you have seen the truth. Text messages, Google searches, a confession, the widow who waited 9 years, the boy who pointed at the woman who killed his mother. Find them guilty for Thomas, for Alina, for Eli. For the living, the defense sat. They had nothing left. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. The foreman stood. In the matter of the state versus Calvin Penn, vehicular manslaughter. Guilty. Conspiracy. Guilty. Attempted harm against Arthur Penn. Guilty. Calvin collapsed forward, his face in his hands, sobbing. In the matter of the state versus Rachel Penn, first-degree intentional harm in the death of Alina Marsh. Guilty. Conspiracy. Guilty. Attempted harm against Arthur Penn. Guilty. Rachel did not move, did not blink, just stared. Sentencing was 2 weeks later. The judge asked if anyone wished to speak. Vera stood first. "I hope that every day you spend in prison you think about Thomas." Diane stood next. "My sister was brave. You tried to erase her, but Eli carries her name. You failed. Then it was my turn. You were my son," I said. "I loved you. I was proud of you. And if you had come to me that morning in 2014, I would have stood by you. But you didn't. You chose to lie. You chose to run. You chose to terrorize a young mother and her boy. And when I uncovered the truth, you tried to take my life. I will never forgive you." Judge Coleman looked at them both. "Calvin Penn, you are sentenced to 50 years. You are eligible for parole after 35 years. Rachel Penn, you are sentenced to life without parole. An additional 55 years for conspiracy and attempted harm." The gavel came down. The first week Eli came to live with me, I turned the spare bedroom into his room. A new bed, a desk under the window, a framed photo of Alina on the wall. On the shelf, I set out the 19 wooden figures. Eli stood in the doorway holding his backpack, looking around as if he could not believe any of it was real. "This is yours," I said. He set his backpack down and pulled out a slim marbled notebook. "Mama said to give this to you, her diary." I sat on the edge of the bed and opened the cover. January 14th, 2023. "Rachel screamed at me through my screen door this morning. She said I had ruined their lives." June 19th, 2023. "Fourth lawsuit filed against me. They won this time." December 7th, 2023. "I hired a lawyer. We drafted a will. I named Arthur as Eli's guardian. The DNA test came back. 98% match. March 1st, 2024. I am afraid, Arthur. I saw her again last night. If I am gone, please protect my boy." That was the last entry. I held the diary to my chest. I sat there for a long time. 3 months after the trial, things began to feel a little lighter. The grief was still there, but it sat a little lower in my chest now. Eli was starting 3rd grade at Cedar Hollow Elementary. He made 2 friends in the first week, a boy named Marcus and a girl named Sophie, and he started smiling more at the dinner table. Diane and her husband Marcus flew in from Portland to help me set up Eli's room properly. Diane always cried when she looked at the framed photo of Alina on the wall. "She would be so proud of you," she told me one night as we sat at the kitchen table after Eli had gone to sleep. "I hope so," I said. "I really do." 9 months after the trial, Diane called. I was in the garage with Eli, teaching him how to sand the edge of a small wooden box when my phone buzzed. "Arthur," she said, "I am pregnant. Marcus and I want to move to Cedar Hollow to be close to Eli. We are going to name her Alina, a little girl, due in January." Eli threw his arms around me. 12 months after the trial, we had a quiet morning. I made pancakes. Eli drowned his in syrup. Do you think Mama would be proud? He asked. I know she would, I said. That evening Diane and Marcus came over for dinner. Vera came too, bringing her youngest son, the quiet 17-year-old who had grown into a kind young man with a steady laugh. We ate roast chicken, we laughed, we told stories. After everyone left, I found an envelope waiting on the porch. Cedar Hollow Correctional, letter from Calvin. I stared at it for a long time. Eli came into the kitchen still wearing his backpack. Are you going to read it? He asked. Maybe not today. Yeah, he said with a small smile. Maybe not today. I put the letter in the kitchen drawer with the others, unopened. Later that night, Eli and I sat on the porch. The fence was gone. I had torn it down myself the previous summer with Vera's oldest boy helping. The yard was open and green now, full of late evening light. Eli leaned his head against my shoulder. Grandpa, are we going to be okay? I looked out at the yard, at the open space where a fence once stood. Yeah, I said, I think we are. 12 months after all of it, I was sitting on the porch on a warm afternoon in early summer, my cane resting against the arm of the chair, the garden Vera helped us plant in the spring spilling out in front of me. Where the fence had once stood there was now a wooden bench I had carved myself, the words "where strangers became family" etched into the backrest. The screen door banged open and Eli came running out, backpack bouncing on his shoulders, his face flushed. Grandpa, look. He thrust a blue ribbon and a paper certificate into my hands. I had won first place in the Young Carvers competition at the fair. At the awards ceremony the next evening, Eli walked onto the stage carrying his carved robin. I learned how to carve from my grandpa, he said. He taught me that things that are broken can still be made into something beautiful. The applause shook the gymnasium. The next afternoon, Eli and I drove out to the cemetery. We brought the blue ribbon and a bouquet of daisies, Eleanor's favorite. Eli knelt by the headstone and pressed the ribbon gently to the marble. Mom, he said quietly, I won. I stood a few steps back, giving him space. The wind moved through the pines, and for a moment I would have sworn I heard Eleanor laugh. We sat there together for a long time, the sun slow in the sky, the world quiet. That evening, Diane hosted a small dinner at the house. Eli sat at the head of the table, his blue ribbon pinned proudly to his shirt. Vera raised her glass to family, the ones we are born into, the ones we choose. We clinked glasses. The room was full. After everyone left and Eli was in bed, I found another envelope on the porch. Letter 11. I sat down on the porch steps and opened it. Eli won the carving competition. Calvin had written. Please tell him I am sorry. Tell him I wish I could have been the father he deserved. I folded the letter and slipped it into my pocket. The screen door creaked open and Eli stepped out in his pajamas. Who was the letter from, Grandpa? Your father. He says he is proud of you. Eli sat down beside me on the steps. Do you think one day I will write back? Maybe, I said quietly. When you are ready. He was quiet for a moment. Not today, though, not today. He leaned his head against my shoulder. I love you, Grandpa. I love you too, Eli. The sun dropped low over the garden where the fence had once stood, and the wooden bench caught the last of the light, and the words carved into the backrest read true, where strangers became family. Eli swung his legs. Grandpa, are we going to be okay? I wrapped my arm around his shoulders. We already are, buddy. He smiled up at me. I love you, Grandpa. I love you too, Eli. As the stars came out, I realized something. Justice was not only found in courtrooms. It lived here in the laughter of a child, in a family that had rebuilt itself from pieces the rest of the world tried to throw away, in a love that no wall, no matter how tall, could ever fully erase. Eleanor's legacy lived on, not in the past, but in every single day Eli chose hope over fear and kindness over silence. Thank you for walking this whole journey with me. If this story meant something to you, leave me one short comment telling me what you would have done in my place. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe to the channel so you do not miss the next one. Just a quick reminder, while this story is inspired by real situations some families have lived through, certain moments were dramatized for the telling.